Hi, I'm Bill Pearis, an editor at Brooklyn Vegan, and you are listening to BV Interviews, which features conversations with some of our favorite artists. This week, we've got filmmaker Chandler Levack, who actually has two new movies out. The first is Mile End Kicks, which is based on her own life as a music journalist and is set against the backdrop of the Montreal music scene of the late aughts and early 2010s. The other film is comedy Roommates, which was made for Netflix under Adam Sandler's Happy Madison production company. Chandler and I talked about recreating the Montreal of her 20s for Mile End Kicks, getting the music and other details right in the film, getting indie musicians to score her movies, how she hooked up with Adam Sandler's company just after releasing her terrific feature film debut, I Like Movies, Montreal bands she thinks deserve more attention, and more. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Chandler Levack. I'm very excited this week to be talking to filmmaker Chandler Levack, who has not one, but two movies out now. Indie film Mile End Kicks, which is set against the Montreal music scene of the late 2000s and early 10s, and a movie for Netflix, Roommates, which was made for Adam Sandler's Happy Madison banner. Chandler, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. This is so cool. I love Brooklyn Vegan.
It's very nice of you to say. You are in what has to be a very rare list of filmmakers who have two movies being released on the exact same day. Do you know any others?
I was doing a lot of research. Spielberg got close, I think, with Schindler's List and Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm actually the first. And why don't we say that on this podcast today? That's true. And then someone can, tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure I'm the first, and I don't understand why.
Right. Yeah, you would think like someone within like the Roger Corman world or something would have done it, right?
Ooh, yeah. Or like, maybe some kind of like silent film pioneer like Cecil B. DeMille or something.
Right, exactly. But for now, maybe, you should call the Guinness Book of World Records or something. And
that's so funny.
And it's kind of wild for it also just to be your second and third movies. What was the general timeline going on here between the two?
I mean, it sort of makes sense because I was cutting Mile End Kicks when I got the sort of job offer to direct Roommates. And then every weekend in our prep time when we were in Newark, I would fly back to Toronto to like work on the sound mix or like work on the color correct. So I kind of, finished Mile End Kicks while I was shooting Roommates. And then as soon as we wrapped, I went back to Toronto to like work on the DCP and stuff. So it does kind of feel like weirdly like I've been making both movies at the same time.
Was it just a pure accident that they're both out on April 17th?
Yeah. It's really like just a total sheer coincidence. And when someone told me that, I was like, what? Like, that's totally nuts. But I wasn't like, let's do that as a strategic like marketing thing. I'm like, just rolling with it. It's been, we had two back-to-back LA premieres on Monday and Tuesday, like Roommates on Monday, Mile End Kicks on Tuesday. So it's, and I'll be very interested to see what happens on Friday.
Yeah. Is Roommates getting any kind of theatrical screening anywhere, like in LA or?
No.
It's just going to be showing up on your Netflix homepage.
Yeah, it'll be shoved in your face.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about Mile End Kicks first. For our listeners who know nothing about the film, how would you describe it?
It's like sort of a love letter to Montreal in 2011. It's about like a young female music critic who moves to Montreal thinking that she's going to write a 33 this is so hard to say 33rd and a third about Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, and said she kind of falls in love with two guys in the same struggling indie rock band. And I've been saying that I want to make a movie that is like filled with like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but kind of like all the worst kinds that you can experience in your early 20s.
Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes going on in this movie.
Mistakes were made.
Yeah. Hilarious mistakes and some
Yeah.
poignant.
How did you feel watching it as like a veteran music critic? Do you feel like you saw yourself in Grace, or like the guys wearing Hold Steady t-shirts in The Office, or like who did you identify with?
I mean, to be honest, it is probably the Hold Steady guys in The Office, unfortunately. Though I'm not really much of a Hold Steady fan, if I'm being perfectly honest. But yeah, I'm a writer and a music snob, or trying to be a recovering music snob, but you know, it's ingrained in me. Like your first movie, I like movies. You're kind of drawing from your own life, but this one felt, I'm assuming it's much more explicitly your life than I like movies.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like the gender swap made it a lot easier for me to kind of figure out what kind of filmmaker I wanted to be. And then with this one, Barbie's wearing like the Sonic Youth t-shirt that I got when I was 20, when I saw them play at McCarran Pool in the summer of 2007.
Okay.
So yeah, it felt a little bit more on set, like, oh God, I'm like not hiding behind anything this time.
I mean, in this case, yeah, as you said, it's more fairly recent history. Montreal doesn't seem to change as much as some cities like New York, at least where it's set. But how hard was it for you to recreate the Montreal in your head of 2011?
I mean, that kind of is the most amazing thing about the Milan. I mean, there's obviously like forces of gentrification there, like any major city, and you can't get a beautiful palatial like 5.5, in the Milan for $500 anymore. But it is kind of like a set at the same time. Like a lot of at least the summer that we shot it, it's funny, like even after we shot it, like a lot of the things that we documented on screen, like were torn down or moved down the street or changed. So the film, even this movie is like kind of a time capsule. Yeah, there's so many venues like Bar La Ritz where we shot, Bone Patrol's like second show, or like the Mylan Kick store itself on Park, or when they go to St. Peter Bagels, or just like, those like really beautiful streets and alleyways and the train tracks like that are kind of like forever exactly the way that I remember when I first lived there in 2011.
That part of Montreal to me, I visit there almost once a year from either Pop Montreal or M for Montreal. It feels frozen in like 1979 or something, the way it looks, the browns, the dépanneur signs and stuff like that.
I know. I mean, to me, it's like so beautiful and cinematic. And I think it's like so singular. And, like in the summertime, especially like the way that the light hits all those buildings, and, people biking down the street past like crowds of like Hasidic families and children playing in the street. Like there's just the energy there's nothing like it. And yeah, I'm such a like person that's like crippled by nostalgia. So, I always want to go to places like New York or Montreal and have things feel the same way that they did when I first experienced them.
Yeah.
And for a long time, that was my issue with like New York, because I lived there when I was 20 doing an internship at Spin, and I would like go to like Veselka or, and be like, why doesn't this feel like the same way that it did when I was here like 2 years ago? And and I think it's the same with Montreal. And it almost feels like having been able to kind of document these places and sort of put them on screen, maybe I have a slightly healthier relationship now to the city and
right.
my own past. But like I will walk down like Hutchinson and Bernard and there's like, I always feel like there's like a ghost, like 23-year-old version of myself kind of like crossing the street ahead of me.
You said you interned for Spin in 2007. That was a pretty good time to be in New York as well.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was so exciting. I saw, it's funny because people have been comparing this film a lot to Almost Famous. And, I wasn't like interviewing like Glenn Frey of the Eagles, but I was interviewing like the bass player of, Vampire Weekend, but it was still just as tremendously exciting for me.
Where did you live?
I lived off the Montrose stop on the L train.
Okay. going back to it being, sort of, you used a lot of your own life from this. Does that make this a harder film to make, especially in the edit room? Is there stuff that like you wanted, but then maybe it didn't really need to be there for the story, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been writing the script for 10 years. Like I started writing this movie when I was 27, and then we shot it when I was 30, 37 or 38. So it's just like a decade of kind of like refining the story and thinking about the character and getting tons and tons of feedback. I mean, I probably wrote like 90 drafts of the screenplay.
Okay.
And then when my brilliant editor, Simone, who's my best friend, did the assembly, she's like, Chandler, this movie is 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So it became a really intense process. It was kind of like, like shaving like a giant slab of marble into like some kind of a statue, and like trying to figure out, what needed to be there and not, and having to let things go and just showing it over and over to like tons and tons of people. I mean, there's a lot of like little private jokes and little moments that I was always like delighted by, and then I was sad to lose it, but it's kind of for the sake of the audience.
Right. Might we get a director's cut?
I don't know. I think I'm good with where it's landed.
Okay.
Maybe some scenes on the DVD.
Is there going to be a DVD?
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. As a former video store employee, my closets are still full of DVDs and Blu-rays and the occasional VHS tape.
That's great. Me too.
Yeah. I'll say one thing about Myelin Kicks. It felt wildly real to me.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, from the apartments and locations to the situations. But I also like that, like the music scene it's set around, it's really sort of backdrop to the story that you're telling, which I thought was great.
Yeah. I mean, I think, my process maybe as a filmmaker and kind of making these like semi-autobiographical portraits of my life is that I'm obsessed with like kind of amassing as many like real world things that I remember from that time. So in this film, like the vape that Archie smokes is like a very specific vape that my best friend in Montreal smoked. It was like a Da Vinci vape, and they don't really make it anymore. And so like hunting that vape down was like very, very difficult to find. We had to get it like shipped on from like someone won an eBay auction contest and then shipped it like from San Francisco.
Wow.
And then the vibrator that Grace has, like that's a very popular vibrator that also they don't really make anymore. So my poor props master was just like, really desperately trying to find the right one.
Wow.
But yeah, I think everything from like the concert posters, like those were designed by Adam Sandler, who really was making like Montreal concert flyers at that time, and sourcing all the music that like I really wanted for the film, and the costuming, all the vintage American apparel. Like I think really my team of collaborators, like they worked so hard and kind of moved heaven and earth to sort of create this really immersive experience, that we all really shared and remembered.
In addition to like the details, like the vape or whatever, I just also meant the situations, which are sometimes very awkward. It all felt extremely real to me, like to the point where like I had to like pause and like walk out of the room a couple times and then, come back in. But I have a problem with like, cringy stuff that happens to me all the time on watching, Larry David or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even I was sort of surprised by that. And, it's really interesting to watch the film with an audience because at certain points it almost feels like a horror movie for like young women. Like some of those sex scenes, like people will just like gasp like so loud as if someone has been like shot in the face, And I guess I always thought that those scenes were kind of funny on the page, but like the actors kind of made them into this really complex, like kind of cocktail of emotions where it's like sexy, but also funny, but like deeply uncomfortable and sad and awkward and like Yeah, sort of. I like when a sex scene can kind of be like transcendent like that.
Hmm. I think my favorite little detail that like goes to making it everything feel real was there's a scene where Grace has to like stand up and wave her arms to get
Yes.
the lights to turn on.
Yeah, that happened to me. I worked at this magazine, and I would always stay there really, really late at night because I have bad attention deficit disorder, and I would always procrastinate on my deadlines, and then I would just like write, like 5 articles in a row, for like 6 hours. And so lights were all on automatic timers. And so at night, yeah, you'd have to kind of like flail around wildly to like get them to turn back on.
Yeah. I thought the casting in this movie is great. Did you have Barbie Ferreira in mind pretty early on? I mean, you two bear a striking resemblance to one another.
Yeah, I mean, I loved her so much in Euphoria, and I thought her character in the first season was just incredible, and I related to her so much. And I was really devastated when it felt like she kind of didn't have as much of an active role in the second season, and then left the show. And so I think after that, I just kind of became a Barbie Ferreira stan for life, and everything that she was in, Unpregnant, really, I delighted in. And then when I saw her in Bob Trevino Likes It, and just really, it was just one of her first leading roles, and just kind of the really raw emotion that she brought to that movie and the pathos. And like, there's one scene where she's crying in front of John Leguizamo. She's trying not to cry, and her voice kind of just catches in her throat. And I paused the movie, and something happened to me, and I just like wept for like 15 minutes just because of like the realism of that moment. Like I couldn't believe how powerful it was. And so, yeah, I just kind of knew that she had like everything that I was looking for. It's a really complicated role and a demanding role for an actor, and they're basically in every shot of the movie, and they have to carry the whole film and do everything. And so yeah, I don't know. And then yeah, it was kind of uncanny when she was styled in those like clear glasses and you know American Apparel shorts and ill-fitting rock tee. Like I was like, yeah, this is weird. How much she looks like me. It wasn't like an intentional thing, but also I feel like Barbie is so gorgeous. So it's kind of like I get my like Hollywood glow up. Like all my friends who watched it were like, oh wow, she's like the yassified you.
The rest of the cast is great too. Like Devin Bostic and Stanley Simons were great as like bandmates and love interests, Archie and Chevy. I definitely knew guys just like that, and maybe I still do. I don't know.
Oh really? Have you interviewed your fair share of Chevys?
Not too many Chevys, more Archies.
Ha ha ha. Do you think the movie got bands accurately, or the dynamics of the band, like having interviewed so many of them?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty accurate. I mean, it wasn't overly about the band, really. It was sort of like in the background, so. And I also thought it was nice that Isaiah, I'm not sure how to pronounce Isaiah's last name. Lettinen, who is the star of I Like Movies, is also a member of the band here. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I mean, I just love Isaiah, and yeah, I love him, and he's just the greatest actor. So I was really excited and happy that it's a very small part that's not really deserving of his talent, but I'm really happy that he was a part of the movie, and everyone in the cast just like bonded with him so hard and fell in love with him. And yeah, he's great in the movie. He really elevates like a tiny part and makes it so fun. He's so much fun to watch.
The band in question, as you mentioned, is called Bone Patrol, which is a perfectly terrible name for a band. Did you have a list of other potential names for Bone Patrol?
No, I can't remember how I came up with it. I knew I wanted like kind of like a slackerish sort of like 90s rock band name, like, Superchunk or like Ween. Yeah, I think I started, I don't know, just thinking about things that like maybe dudes would say like ironically, and maybe it just kind of came to my head like, oh, we're going on Bone Patrol, and then it just kind of came came to me. But yeah, I feel like I wish my job was just to create like fake band names because I find it really, really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I was thinking about is like in Singles, the fake band that Matt Dillon and Eddie Vedder are in. It's called
Citizen Dick. Yeah.
So maybe even subconsciously that's like an homage or something to Citizen Dick.
I can see that. Yeah. Speaking of music, you have gotten indie musicians to score your films. I Like Movies was scored by Murray Lightburn of the Deers. And this one, you worked with Kayla Thompson-Hannett, who was in a band that not enough people knew about, Think About Life. And she performed as Mozart's sister and now makes music as Cecil Believe. How did you end up with her to score the film?
Yeah, I mean, I was obsessed with Think About Life when I was a young person living in Montreal. And to see them live was to kind of like feel like you were being like gently pet by God or something. Like they're just the greatest band of all time and so much fun. And Kayla to me was always like the coolest girl in Montreal. And Mozart's sister, you have to hear her solo album. It's just fantastic. And those songs are such bangers. And then, she's just kind of continued to be such a prolific musician, collaborated a lot with the late Sophie and wrote a lot of songs with Sophie. And is a great solo musician in her own right. So, I really wanted it to be like a female composer that I wanted to work with and someone who was around in the Montreal scene and like kind of had a firsthand understanding of the themes of the movie and sort of related to it. So yeah, it was such a great collaboration. I mean, we talked a lot about different influences for it, like, a lot of kind of like the hangout, like orchestral music that Mac DeMarco kind of did later on in his career. But also, John Prine and all the music that he's, or like Magnolia and his Lady Bird soundtrack and stuff. So I feel like the film is interesting. Kind of, there's so much music in the movie, like between the like 35 needle drops and bands from the era, like Islands and Dishwashers and Think About Life, like playing kind of diegetically in concert scenes to like the music that Bone Patrol's playing to Chevy's solo project that like, I think we were worried like how much music is going to be in this film, but we found, I think, a good balance.
You use some footage of Think About Life in the early moments of the film. I was actually at that show.
I know it's at Arlene's Grocery. It's not at. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was during CMJ in New York City, not actually Montreal, but it does have M for Montreal's like logo in the background.
That's why I liked it. It had that production value.
There's actually, I feel like you can see members of Silly Kissers in the audience in that scene.
Can? Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Who went on to become Tops, who wrote some songs just for the film, right?
Yes, they did. Tops are my favorite band in the entire world. And I've just always loved them so much and thought Jane and David were so cool. And, when I was thinking of who I would be my dream, like artist to work with on the Bone Patrol songs, like they were like I was like, oh my God, I'm like scared to even email them, but it would be like the greatest thing in the world if they wanted to do this with me. And they were just immediately like super into it and enthusiastic and really kind of rose to the occasion. And David especially is just such an amazing songwriter and lyricist. And he kind of like enjoyed the challenge of kind of writing like a kind of grubby like dude rock band. But also, we wanted the music to actually be good. I think you want, if Grace is a critic and she kind of understands like a good band, a good song, like you wanted the band to be legitimately good so that it doesn't feel like everything that she does for them is kind of a waste of time.
Right.
And so, I made this playlist of songs that, were like inspirations, like Rattled by the Rush and like Starlings of the Slipstream by Pavement and I've Been Front by Archers of Loaf became like a very pivotal one because that one I feel like is so concise and such an awesome song, but it also has like a really combustible like guitar solo and just like incredible energy and it's like funny and sad and weird and and then for the song that Chevy plays at the second loft party, Slept in My Jeans, his solo project song, I just, my favorite love song of all time is Bennington by John Mouse.
Okay.
And every time I see John Mouse perform that song live, it's like I don't know if anyone hasn't seen John Mouse play before. He is like absolutely insane performer, like screaming, hitting himself in the face with a microphone. It feels like he's like exorcising demons so wildly. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to like make a song that was as good as Bennington. And Stanley really committed himself to the task of performing it live.
I was also happy to see that you have Think About Life's Martin Caesar in a cameo near the end of the film.
Yeah, that was so touching to me. That was like one of my favorite days on set. Because Martin is such an icon and such a special part of the Montreal music scene. And he's so beautiful in that moment. And that song is very like poignant. And you just see kind of Grace like watching Chevy from across the loft party. And there's like such a look of like anguish and sort of pining that like to me felt very, very poignant. And I can't tell you how many times I've sort of been there myself. And so that felt like a really beautiful thing to get to capture with Martin as part of the soundtrack and on camera.
Obviously, the soundtrack is really crucial here. As you said, there's tons of needle drops. Did you get everything you wanted?
Yes, I did. I'm very, very lucky because it was like it's like one battle after another with the just music licensing and having room in our budget for it. And we really wanted to have Alanis in the movie, and it kind of feels like the film doesn't work if you don't get to hear her voice at least a couple times in the film. So my music supervisor, Evan Dubinsky, who works at Pop Montreal and also was one of the producers on I Like Movies, like he fought so hard for this film to, make deals with companies. And I wrote a lot of personal letters to, Joanna Newsom and Alanis and Deer Hunter and Peaches to, have their music in the movie. And they were very generous with like giving us discounted rates and stuff. And then we had a literal angel investor come in at like the last second, Brian Elkerton, who gave us some additional financing to cover the music. And I'm so grateful that he did, because the movie, like, I think doesn't work without like a really good soundtrack that feels like sort of the emotional heartbeat of the movie.
Is there going to be an actual soundtrack album?
I really hope so. That would be like a total dream to have a vinyl that, we could put on and have it as a little keepsake too. Because I do think there's a lot of bangers in the movie. And I think also I'm just really proud of the music in the film and being able to kind of, have all these songs that really evoke this like, a special time in my life and for my friends too.
Yeah. What other bands and artists would you shout out from the era that you lived there that don't get enough attention?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Oh, God, there's so many. I guess it all depends, because like indie rock is always a thing of like, you talk about someone and they're like, they're overrated. And you're like, the Unicorns are overrated. But, I would say the Unicorns, Miracle Fortress, my friend Graham Van Pelt's band, that he was part of Think About Life as well. And he's amazing, and his music is so beautiful and incredible. I will still give another shout out to Tops because I love them. Sean Nicholas Savage, Cadence Weapon, this band called Torn Start Bandit. They're like an Arvidas Records band. I love Blue Hawaii a lot. And their record, Tenderness, I think is so good. Oh, Magi Merlin, who appears in the film, is an incredible like new musician from Montreal, who's just like doing really, really great stuff. And she's just an absolutely incredible performer. Oh, and then my friend Tyler's band, Reversing Falls.
Reversing Falls?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and No Joy, they're a great band too.
Oh, sure.
God, I mean, it just goes on. And the Deers, Murray Lightburn's band, like who scored my first film. That album, No Cities Left, I listened to that when I was 15 for the first time. And I remember going to Montreal with my parents for the Montreal Jazz Festival and just listening to that like over and over on my CD player, like walking around, downtown Montreal and the Plateau. And it really sounded to me like how Montreal feels like when you're there. And Murray is such a great songwriter and frontman and everything.
That sort of era of the Deers, they were just superstars as far as I was concerned, like.
Oh yeah. I still think that they are. And I absolutely adore Murray. I think he's just brilliant.
How long did you actually live in Montreal? I think when we met at Pop Montreal, which was maybe like 2014 or 2015, you had already gone back to Toronto by that point and were just visiting.
Yeah, I think I was living there that month, actually. I think that's the month that I was writing the first draft of Mylan Kicks, actually.
Oh, okay.
So you caught me like right when it was all happening. But yeah, I've kind of lived there on and off for the last decade. I feel like every 3 years I kind of have this like Saturn return. It's a moment where I'm like, I have to move to Montreal. I'm really going to do it this time. And then I lived there for like 3 months, realize I can't speak French, get my heart broken, have another near-death experience. I've had like 5 near-death experiences in Montreal.
Oh my goodness.
Like the city just like doesn't want me to be there.
You toured I Like Movies some in the US. Are you planning to do a similar thing with Q&As and
Yeah, I'm so lucky. Like the film is going to be released theatrically, like across the states, this Friday, and so I'll be in LA this weekend with Barbie to do a couple Q&As, and Stanley and Devin, I know, are doing some in Montreal, or sorry, in New York, and that I'm hoping that maybe the week after I can go back to New York and do some more. I had a really great screening of I Like Movies at the Music Box in Chicago, and that was really like a dream come true. So it'd be really great to be able to engage with audiences.
Let's talk a little bit about your other film that's out right now, Roommates. How did you get hooked up into the world of Happy Madison and Adam Sandler?
Yeah, I mean, that was a very crazy like confluence of things. I just got this like crazy call. I was editing Mylan Kicks from my agents, and they were like, when we signed you, like, who is the person you said you wanted to work with the most in the entire world? And I was like, Adam Sandler? They're like, well, he saw I Like Movies. I'm like, what are you talking about? He saw I Like Movies. And they're like, he loved it. And he has this project with his oldest daughter, Sadie. It's written by these 2 wonderful SNL writers, Kira O'Sullivan and Jimmy Falley. So, read the script and then he's going to call you on the phone tomorrow. And I was like, what are you talking about? It felt like I just entered like another dimension, or I felt like at the time I was so like broke and kind of like frustrated with the edit of Mylan Kicks. And there's always a period, I think, when you're making a movie where you're like, this movie is never going to come out. Like, it's just never going to exist. And it's so hard. And that completely just changed my life. Like within 2 weeks, I was like in New Jersey, like in pre-production. And within 2 days after speaking to him on the phone, I was in like LA pitching the film to Netflix with Adam Sandler, like sitting next to me. So all of it has just been like completely surreal. And it's been, I've always just like absolutely worshipped Adam, I think a lot of people have a very strong emotional connection to him. He's kind of everyone's, childhood. And so to get to collaborate with him for an entire year and like learn all about his sensibilities and like ways of working with people and how he likes to collaborate and make comedy and be able to pitch him a joke on a Zoom call at 3 a.m. and have him be like, that's fucking funny. It just is everything.
You said you pitched him jokes. What thing did you get into the movie that you're the most proud of?
I mean, it feels weird to like take credit for jokes, but because Jimmy and Kira really wrote such a great script. But I did come up with a bit where Nick Kroll is he's talking on what he thinks is FaceTime, but he's like, it's like he's holding it to his ear like a phone call.
Yeah.
And so they're like, it's FaceTime, like take it away from your ear. And he's like, that made me laugh.
I think my favorite line in the film was Gigi's on fire.
Oh yeah.
I assume making a movie for Happy Madison, it's a real family affair. Like obviously, like he's got his daughter in the film. And he works with a lot of the same people time and time again. It's got to be kind of a well-oiled machine, at least in my mind. It must have been its own kind of film school working on bigger production like this than your first 2 films.
Absolutely. I mean, he saw a movie that like we made for $200,000 in the middle of the pandemic that didn't even have lights, and thought I could make a $30 million like studio comedy. So I feel like the scaling up was huge and crazy, but I worked with such an incredible team. I mean, Adam's had people. My production designer, he worked on Billy Madison. Like he's just been working with him for like over 30 years. And same with his hair and makeup artist, Ann Paula, who's wonderful. Like she was Oscar nominated for Click. So yeah, there was just like a lot of wonderful people on set. We had this very legendary props master, Tim Wiles, who Adam met on the set of Punch Drunk Love. Like he was PTA's like props master.
Wow.
He did Magnolia and Punch Drunk Love, and then Adam kind of scooped him. And he's just like the loveliest, coolest man. And so that was really wonderful to get to work with such a wonderful group of people.
Who made the like architecture diorama, which is at the, in the big presentation of the film and is also in the closing credits, which I thought was very cool.
That was like the genius of Tim for sure. I mean, it was a special model stylist, but Tim definitely like oversaw that. And yeah, it was a real joy to kind of get to do that, like, and kind of make this like facsimile of a dorm room and in kind of as painstaking detail as possible, and kind of like really model the real world, like textures of the dorm stuff and the little props and miniatures from, yeah, that was a really fun prop to build.
I have to say this movie did not end in the way that I was expecting it to. And I mean that in a good way. Like sometimes in movies like that, you can just sort of like see where it's going. And the last act of this film, I did not see coming at all. So that was a really cool, like breath of fresh air. Not to get into too much spoilers, but.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, when I read the script, I was like, this is such a wild ride and like so crazy and so chaotic. And I'm glad that it didn't end kind of like conventionally the sort of expectations I think that you would have for like a normal teen comedy on Netflix,
Right.
Like I feel like there's almost like a codified way that you expect like a Netflix young adult film to be.
That's what I meant,
this film really subverts a lot of expectations, including Nick Kroll calling like a bunch of teenage girls the C word, which was like one of the reasons I sort of wanted to make the movie.
So that was in the script?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was curious with people like Nick Kroll, who are obviously great at improv, how much improv was in this film.
It's kind of a like happy medium. Like a lot of stuff is scripted, but like Nick Kroll kind of just ran wild, Nick and Natasha. So they're improving quite a bit. Yeah, but there's just, there's total ad libs, but I think Nick Kroll is just such a genius in improv that it was really amazing to have him be involved.
The supporting cast on this film is pretty insane, as is often with an Adam Sandler related production, but it must have been a real dream come true.
Yeah, my casting directors, Mary Vernew and Sydney Shercliffe, like they're unbelievable. I mean, they cast Euphoria. They've worked with like Darren Aronofsky all the time. Like, yeah, I mean, it's really extraordinary. So like, I feel like I gave them a list of people, and it was just like an embarrassment of riches. Like every day I'd be like, oh my God, like I'm working with Carol Kane. Oh my God, I'm working with Janine Garofalo. Oh my God, I'm working with, there's a cameo at the end I don't want to spoil, but that was incredibly surreal.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that, how that came about, but I won't spoil it either. But it's you don't just have musicians in Mile End Kicks, is all I'll say.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I know you're busy today. I'm gonna let you go. But what's next for you? Do you have your next movie all lined up?
I think I just want to like maybe take a break and vibe out and figure out what I want to do next. I feel like my first two films, like you could almost call Mile End Kicks. I like music, and then people are like, what's next? Is it like, I like interpretive LA clowning? Is it like, I like, middle-aged premenopausal pottery? No, I don't think so. So I think I'm just going to figure out what I want to do next. But I'm really grateful that both these movies are coming out at the same time. And especially for the Sandler film, I think it's so fun and so funny, and so many wonderful, talented people worked on it with me.
Chandler, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we'll see you next time you're in Brooklyn.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, thanks again to Chandler Levack for being on this week's show. As mentioned, she's got 2 movies out now. Mile End Kicks is currently in theaters, while you can see Roommates on Netflix. I also recommend her first film, I Like Movies, which you can watch on Tubi, Amazon, and other streaming platforms. Meanwhile, you should also check out our other podcast, BV Weekly, where my coworkers Dave and Andrew, and often myself and Amanda, discuss the week's hot button music news, the latest releases, and more. You can also follow Brooklyn Vegan on social media, and if you like this episode, be sure to tell your musically minded friends about it, as well as do all those other things, like, subscribe, write us a review, give us 5 stars. All of that stuff really does help it reach more ears. Big thanks to our mix engineer Nick Gray and Michael Silverstein for the theme music. I'm Bill Pearis. Thanks for listening.